What are the bookmakers' odds for relegation in the upcoming Premier League 23-24 season? Hello guys, welcome back to yet another video. We have looked before at the bookmakers' predictions on this channel, but today we are just single-handedly looking at the bookies' odds for all 20 teams in the Premier League for the 23-24 season and their chances of being relegated this season. Before we get into this video guys, do make sure to share your thoughts down below. Do feel free to let me know what 3 teams you think will go down. We'll find out which 3 teams the bookies think are most likely to go down today. Do make sure to subscribe for more Premier League content, and do make sure of course to hit that like button. We'll go for 400 likes to celebrate a fresh trim. Let's get into the tier list. So then, once again, just like we have done with previous videos on this channel, we are using a tier list to separate the teams. Like I say, this isn't my prediction, it's the bookmakers' prediction. And what's quite interesting if you just look at the relegation odds is it's very different if you just look at the title odds or the top 4 chances, because some teams like Manchester City, who we will come on to, are more favoured to win the league than everyone else, but they're also more favoured to be relegated than some teams in the Premier League, which I think is quite interesting. Let's start by seeing who's the least likely team to be relegated. First up then, with the biggest odds, the least likely in the bookmakers' eyes to be relegated are Arsenal. Like I say, it's very interesting when you just look at the relegation odds. We'll come on to Manchester City in a bit. Arsenal have been in the top flight for so long. It seems as if the bookmakers just think Arsenal cannot get relegated from this division. Do you agree with that one? Not very often do we see top 6 teams get relegated from the Premier League. Another team with ridiculously high odds are Liverpool. Can you see Liverpool getting relegated this season? Not really. With most bookmakers, if you put £1 on Liverpool to be relegated this season, you're going to get £1,001 back, which is ridiculous. But can you see Liverpool getting relegated? Not really. Another team coming up with really high odds on their relegation are Manchester United, and we'll also mention Newcastle United because both bookmakers have them with the same odds. Like I say, with these teams, you just don't associate them with the relegation battle. Even if any of these teams got off to a really slow start to the new season, you feel like their squad depth and resources would just get them through. What is quite interesting is Newcastle United, it was only about 6 years ago, they were actually in the Championship. It goes to show how much times have changed, and they are definitely going in the right direction with the new ownership and the management of Eddie Howe. I just cannot see them being back in the Championship anytime soon. So then that completes the first 4 teams here, and the bookmakers just don't see any of these going down. The odds on them going down are incredible. Let's start moving on to teams that are still unlikely to go down, but the bookmakers think it's more probable than the first 4 teams we mentioned. First up, it's Manchester City. Now I want to talk about Manchester City because it is an interesting one. If you look at any bookmakers' predictions for who's going to win the league or which team do they think's got the strongest chance of wrapping up a top 4 place, it's Manchester City. Manchester City are considered the strongest team, and I think most people will agree with that. When you look at relegation odds though, they're more fancied for relegation than those 4 teams we just spoke about. Do feel free to share your thoughts on why that might be. I would imagine it's because of off the pitch issues, and if there was to be a possible points deduction for Manchester City for breaching rules, then that obviously could suck them further down the table. The reality is though, let's say Man City got hit by a 40-point deduction, they're still going to stay up because they always get over 75 points in the Premier League, so they'd have to get hit with a massive points deduction and get stripped with all their players as well for them to go down. But the bookies think it's still more likely than the first 4 teams. Let's come on to the next teams. Chelsea and Tottenham Hotspur both hit with similar odds here from the bookmakers. I think before last season, Chelsea and Tottenham probably would have been on a similar level with Manchester United and Newcastle in terms of very much not fancied for the relegation battle. They're still not fancied for it, but I think after underwhelming seasons, the bookmakers feel like they can pull them just a little bit closer to a potential relegation battle next season. Still massively unlikely. Next up then, we've got some teams that are going to be playing in Europe next season. We've got Brighton and Hove Albion, and let's get through all of these. You've also got Aston Villa and West Ham as well. They're all being hit with similar odds, to be honest, for their chances of being relegated. Now personally, I don't think any of these 3 will be relegated, but what we will mention is, like we have seen in previous seasons, West Ham being the prime example, playing in a European competition can certainly distract you from the Premier League. Now that's not to say that definitely will come true for all 3 of these or even for any of these, but it certainly could be possible that one of them could be going so far in the European competition that they slide a little bit further down the Premier League table. So then as we move into the top half of the tier list, which would essentially be the bottom half of the Premier League, we start with Brentford. Now Brentford are pretty much slap bang in the middle of these predictions, just like they are for the overall Premier League table predictions this season. The bookmakers just think Brentford are that middle team. I mean, they did finish 10th last season. I've said on record over the last few videos I've made going into the new season that I actually think there's a room and opportunity here for Brentford to push on. I mean, if the recruitment continues to be sensible, Thomas Frank is certainly a well-proven manager now at this level. I think there's a possibility they could maybe leapfrog one of the teams that got into Europe last season, as they're concentrating on Europe in the next season. On average, most bookmakers' predictions for Brentford being relegated are 9 or 10 to 1. So if you put £1 on, you might get 10 or £11 back. Let me know if you think that's a fair prediction. I've seen some people saying Brentford could have a strong season. I've seen other people saying they could fall down the table a little bit. Share your thoughts on Brentford. Next up, with kind of similar odds to Brentford on being relegated, are Crystal Palace. Once again, most bookmakers don't see it happening for Crystal Palace. They've now been in the Premier League 10 years. I mean, it's incredible really, because I remember them being in the Championship and going into that 2013 season. They did amazing, and they got up, and 10 years in the Premier League now, and they're well established. They're not just surviving each season, they're pretty much in the middle most seasons. They finished 11th last year, and as you can see here, the bookmakers think it's going to be a similar story. This is about 11th when you correlate it to table predictions here. So most bookies with a prediction of about 7 or 8 to 1 on the odds of Crystal Palace being relegated. Let me know if you think that's fair down below. Next up, we have got Everton. Now this is the one where I've seen probably the most disagreement between the bookmakers and fans I've seen commenting on the channel. Now the bookies seem to think Everton should be alright, not a million miles away from it, but they should be alright. This is about a 12th or 13th place finish in the table with this as a prediction. But quite a few people that are commenting their predictions for the new season are saying that they think Everton's time is up. They think Everton could go down this year. Now I've said before that I really could see this going either way. If you look at it in terms of a team that just keeps surviving, they could eventually go down. But Everton fans will be quick to point out as well that Sean Dyche did amazing, and like we said, if the Premier League started when he came in, Everton would have been further up the table than a 17th place finish. So share your thoughts on Everton. The bookies on average are saying it's about 5 or 6 to 1 on Everton being relegated this season. Do let me know your thoughts down below. Next up, you've got both Wolves and Nottingham Forest actually coming up with similar odds, both just scraping into this category with around 3 to 1 on the odds. So if you put £1 on one of these two going down, you probably get about £4 back. For Wolverhampton Wanderers, it's a little bit of a fall from grace, considering we saw them in the top half in the Premier League just a couple seasons ago, but last year we saw a little bit of a regression, even though I thought they ended the season quite well under the new manager. And as for Nottingham Forest, this correlates to, like we say, about a 15th or 16th place finish, which would be okay. I think Forest fans would like to push on a bit more, but they saw the reality of the Premier League and how hard it is to stay up, and the bookmakers did seem to write off Nottingham Forest throughout the majority of last season. So it's nice to see a change in that aspect if you're a Forest fan, that the bookmakers do think you're actually going to stay up this time round and not as a team just in 17th place. Most bookmakers have Forest to finish around 15th, 16th. The final team that's just snuck into this category are Fulham. Now this would be a bit of a fall off. We've touched on it before on this channel, how brilliant of a season it was for Fulham to win the Championship and then come up and get straight into the top half of the Premier League, especially when lots of people considered them to be a bit of a yo-yo and they thought they were going to go back down. The bookmakers' predictions would show a little bit of a regression here from Fulham down into that bottom half, but yet still getting over the line at the same time. Fulham fans, share your thoughts. Do you think the bookmakers just don't like you and you're never going to be able to win them round? On to the next two categories then. We've got 4 teams left. 2 teams are considered to be odds on to be relegated, and there's 2 teams that are just above even on staying up. The first of those being Burnley. We touched on it before when we looked at the bookmakers table predictions for the Premier League season upcoming, that Burnley they had in around 17th place. I suppose finishing in 17th place is staying up, and that's what Burnley want, but I still think they're kind of underestimating them a little bit, and to be honest, they always undervalue the teams that have come up. I'm surprised they haven't put Burnley as an odds on team to go down, because the bookmakers never fancy the teams that have come up. With most bookmakers, Burnley are around 2 to 1 or 5 to 2 on their odds of staying up, so the bookmakers do fancy them to stay up, but just about. Next up are AFC Bournemouth, and Bournemouth fans are no strangers to the fact that the bookmakers always tend to write them off. They have got them as odds on to stay up, but just. With most bookmakers saying AFC Bournemouth's chances of survival are about 2 to 1 this season, so you put £1 on, you're probably going to get £3 back. So even though in the grand scheme of things they're third from bottom in their odds of who's going down this season, the odds themselves have Bournemouth to just stay up, if that makes sense. So they are sliding into this category with Burnley. Bournemouth fans, share your thoughts. Even if you think you're staying up, do you think it'll be by the skin of your teeth? Let me know down below. On to the 2 teams that the bookmakers have as odds on to be relegated this season. It's no surprise, don't take it personally if you support one of these 2. It's 2 of the teams that came up. Sheffield United, who finished second, who are just below evens on most bookmakers' predictions to stay up. So if you're a Sheffield Sheffield United fan and you fancy your chance of staying up this season, it's possibly worth sticking a couple of quid on this. I do think I've said before on record that I think it's going to be very close for Sheffield United. I did tip them to just stay up in my early predictions for the new season. No surprise here, the bookmakers have gone for them to go down. I must say I am surprised by the bookmakers not learning their lesson from last season, because they wrote off the 3 teams that came up last year and then they all stayed up. But they're doing a similar thing this year. Then again, the bookmakers might have their own reasons as for why they are doing this. You never really know. But Sheffield United are a team that they fancy to go down. Do share your thoughts if you're a Blades fan. Do you think your team is up to the task? Do you think you're going to be able to prove people wrong this season? I personally think Sheffield United might be alright, but no surprise the bookmakers don't think they will be. The final team are Luton Town. Once again, it's not entirely surprising that the bookmakers think they're going to go down as the worst team. Luton Town did finish 3rd. They did come up through the Championship playoffs, but I do feel like there will be that air of unpredictability about them coming up this season. Not many Premier League teams have played them in recent years, so maybe they'll be a team that some teams just struggle to figure out. What I will say though is if you're a Luton Town fan and you think you're staying up, or if you're just anyone who thinks Luton Town might stay up, it's certainly worth sticking a few quid on, because they are odds on to go down as that bottom team quite clearly in most bookmakers' predictions. But I'd like Luton Town to prove a lot of people wrong, I must say. So then guys, there you go. That's a look at the bookmakers' relegation odds. Like I say, it's very different to just looking at the bookmakers' predictions for the whole table, because here we're just looking at the relegation odds and working our way up from the bottom, which has presented a little bit of a different table from when we just looked at the table odds in general. Do share your thoughts down below, guys. I am intrigued to see your thoughts and which 3 teams you think will go down. Do you think there could be a wild card team? We do tend to get a team that not many people expected to go down at least every so often, so do share your thoughts on that. Do hit the like button, as I say, and do hit the subscribe button. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.